Hello everyone. Now we are into session number 24 where we continue reading the essay Tradition and the Individual Talent by T.S. Eliot. So now we are into the final part of his essay, part 3 or section 3, which can be called as a conclusion or summary. As you all know, the essay is divided into 3 sections or 3 parts. The first part deals with Eliot's conception of tradition. The second part explains about his theory of impersonal poetry. And now we are into part 3, which is the concluding section of this essay. So, the objectives of this essay is to understand the last section, third part, that is summary or conclusion, and also to look into few criticisms on this particular essay, okay, which we will come in the end of this session. So, before I proceed with the third section, so let us recall because things we have discussed so far. So, this essay was written by T.S. Eliot, well known poet and essayist of 20th century, a significant part of new criticism. T.S. Eliot, along with other new critics such as F.R. Lewis, Q.D. Lewis, John Crowe Ransom, W.K. Wimsatt and others. So, this essay Tradition and the Individual Talent was first published in a literary journal called Egoist in the year 1919, and later it was published in Eliot's first book of criticism called The Sacred Wood. Okay. So, here we must understand that Eliot he describes himself as a person who has a belief in the deep rootedness of tradition. So, if one understands this particular aspect of T.S. Eliot's personality, we will be able to understand this essay in a very better manner. So, in this essay, as we have already looked into, Eliot discusses his views on poetry and the importance of tradition. Okay. So, the first part where he explains about what is his conception of tradition and how tradition plays a significant role in the process of poetic tradition, poetic creation. Eliot starts his argument by saying that in the modern world, the contemporary 20th century world, tradition is looked in a very disapproving way by the people. So, this has to be changed because people what they are doing today, that people appreciate poet for the newness and what differentiates the poet from others. But Eliot takes back poetry to the earlier traditions. He says a poet should belong to the great tradition of poetry, or he should have the understanding that there lies a wonderful tradition of poetry in the past, and he has to become that part of tradition. And how a poet can become part of the tradition? By having historical sense, he says. Okay, the sense or the knowledge of history will enable a poet to become part of this great tradition. Okay. So, he says in one of the important lines in the essay, he says that poet has to write not merely with his own generation in his bones, but with a feeling that all past literature of Europe, for example Homer, is within him. Okay. So, that is how a poet should give importance to history and old tradition, and it is this historical sense makes the writer traditional, and it is more important than the individual poet. Okay. So, this is what he explains in the first section of the essay, the tradition, okay, where he explains the concept of tradition. And we also looked into the second section where Wordsworth comes up with his theory of impersonal poetry, where he says that the process of depersonalization is very, very important in the process of artistic creation. That a poet should be objective and impersonal as much as possible in the process of poetic creation. So you should not get influenced by let me put it like this: the honest criticism mainly focuses on the poetry but not on the poet. This is one thing. And the second one, a poet should be impersonal and objective. So in this context, Eliot compares mind of the poet to that of a catalyst in a chemical reaction. We all know a catalyst, though a very significant part of any chemical reaction, and it results in the creation of a new product at the end of that reaction, what we see that a catalyst remains unchanged in the process. Similarly, a poet's mind should be that of a catalyst. At the end of the creation of a poem, the mind of the poet should remain unchanged. Okay, so this is what he explains in this section. Another important thing he discusses is how he is disapproval. He gives his disapproval of William Wordsworth's theory of poetry. Because Wordsworth was a very significant part of romantic poetry, romantic criticism. He says poetry is emotions recollected in tranquility. It is spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings. So feelings and emotions are significant according to romantic criticism, that too specifically speaking of William Wordsworth. But Eliot says feelings and emotions are not just the significant part of poetic process. What he says, that the intensity of the artistic process and also the concentration of experiences, they form the basis for poetic creation. So a poet should not write something just because he is emotionally carried away. Yes, he must think, he must concentrate all the experiences of his or her life and the contemporary situation, and he must write out of those experiences. And at the end, even though he writes influenced by the experiences of his immediate environment, but the poet should remain unchanged. So this is what Eliot discuss in his second section, that is theory of impersonal poetry. So what we will do, we will look into the third section. As I have already explained, at the end of this session, students will be able to understand the concluding part of the essay, and they should be able to make critical appreciation. Okay, because at the end I will give in brief, I will explain some criticisms about Eliot's concept of tradition and impersonal poetry. So what I expect from you people is to make your own critical analysis of the essay at the end, okay, after reading the essay. So in the concluding part, I'll just sum up in brief what Eliot says. As I've already explained, that the emotion of art or artistic creation or poetic creation is impersonal. So to put it in other terms, a poet should stay impersonal as much as possible. He has to be objective in his approach. Okay, and the poet cannot reach this impersonality without surrendering himself only to the work to be done. So another important thing which Eliot says, that a poet cannot reach this impersonality, that he cannot claim himself to be impersonal in the process of poetic creation until he surrenders himself only to the work to be done. So if you remember what we discussed in the first, when we looked into the first section of the this essay, where Eliot says that is to become a part of great tradition, it is a painstaking effort. It needs hard labor by the poet to do that. So what Eliot expects from a poet is that he should surrender himself completely to the work to be created or to be done. And Eliot says he is not likely to know, the poet is not likely to know what is to be done unless the poet lives in what is not merely in the present but the present moment of the past, unless he is conscious not of what is dead but of what is already living. So we are into the concluding part. We are not looking at something totally new. I have already explained it in the earlier sessions that when in the first section of the essay where he speaks about the tradition, there is one important concept he explains, that tradition is dynamic, it is not static. So, when a poet belongs to the great tradition, he must understand that when he creates a new form of poetry, new artistic piece, he cannot say that it is totally new. He must understand the fact that it has its reflections of the past, and this new product can also have the ability to change the earlier tradition also. That is what we have to understand when we look into this particular part, that old and new, the past and the present, they are complementaries but they are not binaries. They have the capacity to influence over one another, but we should not come to the conclusion that one particular historical period is superior over the other. So a poet should understand that the product which he creates, the poetry, is not something totally new, but instead it has its roots in tradition. And Eliot also makes it very much clear that a poet should carry the reflections of earlier tradition. I have explained it earlier. For example, a contemporary writer writing something in 21st century should have reflections of Wordsworth or Shakespeare or Yeats or Keats, the innumerable number of great poets of his or her earlier generation. Then only he becomes the part of great tradition. So here following the earlier tradition is not about the copying things, it is to have the reflections of the great tradition. This is what Eliot explains in the concluding part of this essay, in the summary part of this essay. So proceeding further, so Eliot concludes by saying that poetry is not turning just into a spontaneous overflow of emotions, but one must understand poetry should be an escape from emotion. Okay, so we have already understood. So it is not the expression of personality, but it is an escape from personality. We have understood this concept in the second section of the essay. Two important things: the theory of impersonal poetry. I have already explained it several times. Let me repeat it in brief one more time, that a poet should remain impersonal and objective in his approach. What is important here? That a poet should remain unchanged at the end of poetic creation, and the best example is that of a catalyst in a chemical reaction. And the other thing, that poetry is not just a spontaneous overflow of emotions, but it is an escape from emotion. So instead of emotion, we see experiences, yes, and the pressure of artistic creation. These two come into the front line rather than emotions in the process of artistic creation. So what we understood in the second section of the essay, where Eliot raises his criticism on William Wordsworth's conception of poetry and romantic poetry in general. Okay, because Wordsworth, for him, poetry is spontaneous overflow of emotions, and emotions recollected in tranquility. That becomes a basic principle in romantic poetry. But for Eliot, it is not emotions which are significant. It is expression of it is an escape from these emotions. These are important. What is important? Experiences. as I have already explained. A poet should not end up writing just because he is running or his body is rushing with so much of emotions such as sadness, anger, love, pity, fear, so many other emotions. What he says, let poet remain objective, impersonal, and the experiences of his immediate surroundings, let him write something about societal issues such as, yes, global warming, or what kind of inequality we see in the society. So all these things should become an integral part of poetry rather than just letting loose one's emotions. That is what Eliot explains in this particular concluding part. So he says the poet can know what is to be done if he acquires a sense of tradition. So at the end he comes up with the argument, the same argument with which he starts this essay, that the poet can know what is to be done. A poet will be very much clear about what artistic creation he or she has to do only when he or she acquires a sense of tradition, when they acquire the knowledge of tradition. Tradition refers to the historical sense or the sense of past. If a poet has this sense of tradition, then only he is clear about the artistic creation. So this essay, to put it in brief, in 2 or 3 important sentences, you can say that tradition becomes very important. The sense of history becomes important. The sense of belonging to the great tradition becomes important for a poet rather than his individual talent. So this is what he is arguing in this particular essay. For him, being part of the great tradition and carrying the reflections of earlier tradition in the contemporary poetry is significant rather than a poet standing alone and calling himself as an individual creator of art. Okay, that is how one can understand this essay, Tradition and the Individual Talent by T.S. Eliot. So now we looked into the third part of the essay, the concluding part, the summary part of the essay, where he concludes by saying that a poet should be objective, impersonal, should have sense of history, should have sense of tradition. He must carry the reflections of those earlier tradition in his contemporary poetry, and it is not just emotions which are significant in the process of poetic creation, but it also the pressures of creation of poetry because of personal experiences, not personal experiences of society. This is very significant for T.S. Eliot. Okay, so at the end we look into some of the criticisms which are raised about T.S. Eliot regarding what he explains in this particular essay, Tradition and the Individual Talent. So Eliot's theory of tradition has been criticized for 2 or 3 important things. The first one is here it gives this essay gives an unlimited definition of what constitutes the canon of tradition. So here one thing is not clear for the reader or for a budding poet to understand what exactly Eliot is suggesting, so that he can become the part of that great tradition, because nowhere you see that Eliot he comes up with his explanation where he defines what exactly constitute the canon of great tradition. So how one should understand that this particular work or this particular period is a part of great tradition, so that a poet, contemporary poet, can carry the reflections of such poetry in his artistic creation. That is not clear. So it is very ambiguous, and sometimes a reader may not be able to understand which particular tradition he is talking about. Yes, he says it is dynamic, it keeps on changing, but it would have become more easier for poet, contemporary poet, if Eliot would have, if he would have made it more clear, bit more clear. Okay, so this is how I look at this essay. Okay, it is also open for discussion and it is debatable. You can come up with your arguments. And then the other one is it's looking at this essay in today's scenario, contemporary scenario, where we have reached a point, we are now in a post-structuralist, post-modernist, post-colonial phase of literary criticism. It is very obvious that this essay is too much Eurocentric in its approach, because the examples, the mode of approach, and the scenario in which the great tradition can be created, all these things are explained in the context of Europe. So in this contemporary literary criticism, we may raise questions because it is too much Eurocentric in its approach. And the other important thing, okay, let me add that also, that as the title suggests, that tradition and the individual talent, where tradition becomes important rather than the individual talent of the writer or the poet. So how one understands this? How can one understand this particular aspect? Because there are arguments that even the individual talent of a poet is also plays a very significant role. It's not necessary that all the time he has the knowledge of great tradition or carries the reflections of great tradition in his poetry. Sometimes he may be free, or he may stand alone himself and create a great poem. So in this way we can raise our questions, or we can raise our criticisms against T.S. Eliot's arguments in this essay, and the tradition and the individual talent. Okay, so with this essay we understood through this session we understood all the three sections of the essay. I hope this is helpful for you. Please read the essay several times and then listen to the lecture so that you come up with a better understanding of T.S. Eliot's arguments. Okay, thank you.